My name's Nell Farrell and I'm the Community Participation Officer here at Abbeydale Industrial Hamlet. My role had two main strands to it. The first one being to recruit and train and develop and coordinate volunteers to get involved with and enliven the activities here on site. And the other strand was about generally encouraging people to visit and get involved here, with a particular emphasis on groups who might not immediately think, oh, Industrial Heritage Museum, that's my idea of a fun day out. We decided fairly early on that we wanted a team of volunteers who would actively be part of the visitor experience here. So part of the project was to redevelop the interpretation, the telling of the Abbeydale story, in a way that was really accessible to visitors and made people really understand what a fantastic place this is, its place in Sheffield's industrial history. And we saw quite quickly that a team of volunteers would be a really good link between visitors and that story, would be able to help interpret it, explain things, key people into where to visit on the site.
Our role is really to try and enhance a visitor's experience of being here at Abbeydale. So we'll try and make people feel welcome and at home, try and maybe point out some of the key things to look at. If they want us to, tell them what we know about it, we'll try and do that as well.
I come down once a week on a regular basis and occasionally other times, and we will meet the visitors, try and give them a bit of an introduction to the place. There's a vast amount of knowledge from the people who work here and who volunteer here. And the longer you're here, the more you know.
They did so much here. It wasn't just one process. They did virtually everything from making the steel to sending out the completed scythe blades from here. So I think it's got an awful lot to show and demonstrate and offer, and just has that special feel. So I think it's a fabulous part of the heritage of Sheffield, the story of Sheffield.
I get the fun out of being here. You see all sorts of different people, from 3-year-olds who want to run around on the grass to 85-year-olds who say, well, I remember when we used to do this. So it's a living place, and the more people there are here, the better it is. When we have event days and there are 200 people on the site, it's absolutely wonderful. It brings it back to life.
Out of the visitor services, the first training programme that I ran for the visitor services volunteers, one of those volunteers, Karen, she's a really keen gardener. She noticed the garden and was talking to me about what was happening with the garden, and there had been this idea of bringing someone in, but that required a bit of funding we didn't have at the time, so that had gone onto the shelf. And Karen just said one day, well, why don't we do it?
As a visitor services volunteer, I was taking people around. Every time I came into the garden here, I thought, gosh, that's so sad, because it obviously had the potential to be a very beautiful garden, and also realised it must have been used to supply the people who lived here with vegetables and fruit, and so that's really what it ought to be doing, not just covered in weeds.
Out of that, really out of Karen's initiative, we developed a garden project. So last summer we put out a sort of notice that we were going to be in the garden, come and chat to us in the garden, see if you're interested in getting involved. And now, a year on, we've got the garden project who meet every Tuesday and have utterly transformed the garden. I firmly believe that one of the things that helps volunteering be sustained is having some active coordination and somebody who's responsible for those volunteers and responsible for their welfare, and just in a really human way checking in with them, letting them know that what they do is appreciated. One of the really important things for me in taking on this job was to really build that idea of community and develop that connection, that emotional connection between the groups of volunteers and between volunteers and visitors, and between all of us and the site and Sheffield's history, and using that energy to carry Abbeydale forward. So that's happened really well. The Haberdashers group, it's been running as part of the community volunteer project here now for probably getting on for a year. It's a real mix of people who have those skills already in stitching, quilting, crocheting, and people who've come along because the idea sounded interesting and they wanted to develop those skills.
I suppose my main and first love is patchwork quilting. The history behind the quilts is you made a quilt and it went on your best bed, and then it might have gone on the children's bed, and then it might have been to wrap round Granny's legs in the rocking chair, and then eventually the dog slept on it. It was an ongoing thing really in days gone by, that you didn't throw anything away. It sort of went in the recycling pile to use for rag rugs or patchworking or whatever.
Judy in the group knows a lot about patchwork quilting, so I've learnt all my tricks with patchwork quilting from her. People have learnt rag rugging from me. The design, we've got somebody that's really good at design, and we feed off each other about what looks good and what we could do to make things look better.
It's lovely coming here every Monday morning because the environment's so nice, the old buildings. You hear the trains go past at the back, and it's just a lovely atmosphere to work in. It's like a little community, you know, a lot of us have been here for a long time. It's very, very friendly indeed.
They've made quilts for the houses, they've made traditional peg dolls for the houses, they've made quite a few rag rugs. Rag rugging's taken off in quite a big way because that's quite an easy skill for people to pick up, but it's quite companionable and relaxing. At the moment they're making cushion covers for the cushions that children sit on when they come for educational events. As well as making things for the houses, they're in the process of creating some display pieces that will eventually go up in the learning centre. So they're making a triptych of rag rugs themed to Abbeydale, and they're also creating a wall hanging made up of individual squares that each of them are embroidering or appliquing with some aspect of Abbeydale Industrial Hamlet that means something to them.
Got some leaves.
We've established a regular programme now of children and families activities which happen in the school holidays, so at half terms and across the big summer holiday. We have what we call Make Your Own Wednesdays, so it's a traditional craft-based activity for children and adults together that happens here, usually themed on Abbeydale in some way, so drawing inspiration from the place itself or from traditional skills.
Today we came to Sheffield and we were making a nail. We've seen people do it before and it looked really good, so we had to go.
You had to get a certain sheet of rod of metal, and then you had to heat it up, and then had to whack the end of it.
Turn it around to that one. Go on.
It was quite hard. So you have to hit the same point really hard over again.
The hammer was heavy. My arms ache. It's quite fun.
Once you get your hands on, that's the only way you realise it's a hammer, it weighs that much. Well, you have to pick it up to know that. You have to strike it to know that. It's that interactivity that's really important, and that's not by pressing buttons, that's by actually holding things.
It took about an hour to do this, and then if you're more skilled, you could probably do it a lot quicker.
It's quite good. There's loads of other stuff to do here as well.
It gives them a connection with what's in the countryside as well as what's in the towns, and I think that's people miss that sometimes when they just spend all their time in cities.
Well done. Congratulations.
Over the last few months, we've really consistently been getting feedback from visitors along the lines of this place really feels alive these days. It really looks and feels as if it's loved. And one of the things that I've really noticed that's really struck me about all the different volunteer groups, visitor services, garden project, haberdashers, people get really attached to this place. There's something about it that is very interesting and gets a hold of you emotionally. And I think some of what's happening is that the volunteer team are really communicating that to visitors. And also the garden project have made the garden look very beautiful. The haberdashers have brought colour and interest of a different kind into the houses, and the visitor services volunteers talk with real enthusiasm to people, and that communicates itself, and that's really fantastic.
In the 2 years that the Learning Centre and cafe has been open, we're getting regulars coming to the cafe and also to the site. We get the walkers in on a Tuesday morning, and they come from all around the Door and Totley and Abbeydale area, and they come and do a walk and then come back for teas and coffees. When the schools come in, they can have that space and have a nice time with the interactors, and we can have events or weddings or corporate functions.
Hands up if you're with me! Hands up if you're...
Following a review of our education service, we decided that we needed to reinvest some money in training our staff. So we employed a trained professional actor, Andrew, who works with lots of museums all over the country. He really got the interactor team to think through every little detail of their characters. So it was a massive sort of learning curve, I think, for the whole team, and a lot of them have come back to us afterwards saying that that was one of the best parts of working for us so far, has been this project.
I'm going to turn it around and you just look in the mirrors and you've got mirrors all around. Isn't that marvellous? That is cool. Those are all the things that I would like to sell in my toy shop. Some of the things cost just 6p.
They're learning all about how things were different for children in Victorian times compared to their lives today. And the fact that we brought them here is because you can teach as much as you like in a classroom situation, but actually physically coming to a place like this brings it more alive, I think.
We talked about toys and we made a toy as well. I like it because it helps me learn about history quite a bit, and I quite like history as well.
Marvellous, when you've finished you can go and hang it up. Okay, next one, over to the mango.
We've been washing clothes and exploring the houses. We had to put them washing through the mango and then twist it round so it got all the water out, and then had to hang it up to make it dry in the wind.
This activity, the washing, is about home life. So we split one class into 3 groups for the home activity. One does the washing, one goes and explores the workers' cottage, and one goes to explore the manager's house. And there are certain questions to prompt their thinking, certain things for them to look out for, to find out about the children that lived in those houses. In the winter, instead of the washing activity, we actually make drop scones on the fire in the manager's house.
Now, your job is to take this molten steel, careful, I got a bit close there. That's why we use these, isn't it? Because if we used our hands, what would happen? Ouch, exactly right. So here's your tongs. You're going to grab it by the side now, and very carefully, careful now, pour it into our mould.
When we're in character in a place like this, in a setting like this, I think hopefully it brings it to life even more from them. And quite a lot of the time, some of the children absolutely completely believe the world that we sort of create here at Abbeydale, and go off and, you know, they've had questions where they're asking teachers, oh, does he really live there? Or, oh, is he going to be all right working in the steelworks? So you really create quite a real world for them here.
They're definitely engaged in what they're doing. They're discussing it. Every single one of them has been interacting with the people that have been here, dressed as characters, and got involved in the activities that they've been given to do, and are learning the whole time without even realising it, actually, which is fantastic.
That weighs about 45 kilograms. Does anyone know how much you weigh?
Part of the HLF remit was to re-enliven the site with new living history tours. What we wanted was not a sort of traditional tour where you take people around for an hour and just tell them things. We wanted it to be led by the visitors. So what we've created is a new living history sort of performance and set of mini tours called Who Shot Mr. Tyzack. We've based it around the sort of 1860s, which was a time of quite a lot of industrial unrest in Sheffield. We call it the Sheffield Outrages, when trade unions were demanding better rights for workers, better pay, better conditions, and some of that happened at Abbeydale. So one of the work's owners, Mr. Tyzack, we look at his brother Joshua, and we've actually got evidence that he was shot at. People sort of thought that it was probably to do with the outrages because previously things had been blown up at Abbeydale because the workers there were not happy that they were employing non-union labour. We've got a public version at the moment which was launched as part of the festival Forging, and that went down really well with the public. It was a bit of a soft launch just to test it out and see how it went. They enjoyed the performance, they loved chatting to the characters and being led around. People found that they were really believable characters, and that the people who were acting them really believed in the characters themselves. And that all came from the training that we did with Andrew. In addition to the public side of it, we're also going to launch it as a schools day. So as well as taking part in the performance and having tours by the characters, we're also aiming to have some sessions led by each character that school groups can come and take part in and become investigators themselves. One of the big things for me here has been the development of the app. That's the Abbeydale Explorer app. And we've also got some iPads that schools or family groups can borrow as they're going around the site. The app was developed in order to improve access across the site, so now places around the site that were inaccessible to wheelchair users are now more accessible because we've got video of the upstairs of the houses, for example.
The Tilt Forge. This is where the forge.
I like the app because it's really good for self-guided visits, so it's something that was dropping off for our school visits. And I think the app is really going to reinvigorate those sort of self-guided visits because teachers can have a look at that at home. They can download it for free at home. They can do some preliminary work at school with it, and they can also do some post-visit work back in school as well. We've also been doing a lot of work to conserve and restore the working machinery around the site. So once the 4 water wheels are back up and running and all the associated machinery is working again, or the bits that can be working, I really think that's going to be a big draw for schools because they'll be able to do science technology themed sessions as well as the history themed events. So at the moment we're working towards developing some new science technology based sessions looking at gears and mechanisms, pulleys and all that sort of thing that ties in with the site.
The tilt wheel behind us that's running now was stood for 8 or 9 years. The shaft that runs through the wheel and is the axle had rotted from the ends, and it had been repaired on both ends 2 or 3 times. And it was at the end of its life, so we've changed the shaft and changed some other aspects of the wheel timber-wise that were too rotten to be serviceable, and now it runs. We're now working on the large wheel for the grinding hull, which similarly had a shaft that had rotted in from the ends and been repaired, and we've replaced the shaft in that. We have run that, and it's run its machinery, but we're now changing some of the bucket boards and different aspects of timber on the wheel itself. We've learnt from experience when we took over from Shepherd Wheel after a big project that when you start running historic machinery that's not been run for 10 years, you follow the faults down the drivetrain, because once you've got your water wheel running, then other aspects start to fail that you'd not fully considered. We've been at it 2 years and we're into the second summer now, so we probably will be at it for 3 years. One of the other engineers has launched at #HairyEngineers, and he's been tweeting pictures of our progress reports, and lots of people around England have picked up on that from different mills and water wheel sort of places and associations. There's lots of photography that can be put in written reports that will tell the story of what we've done. So in 70 years' time, when somebody else is doing this again, they'll see how we've done it, whereas we didn't have that sort of privilege when we started. We had to start thinking up ideas of how to get a 3-ton water wheel shaft out of a building. We videoed the first and second running of the wheel without anybody around, just to make sure it was all going to go straight. And I think I said that was a threshold moment, and it ran well. It ran all right, so we were all quite happy about that. It animates the site, and now we've got the sights and sounds because we've got blacksmiths on site tapping away and making things, so it's all coming to life nicely. It's a bit of an achievement, you have to pinch yourself sometimes.
I think it's lovely. I mean, I've come from Chesterfield over that area, so certainly I'll be telling my friends back there, and hopefully they'll come as well.
I just think it's all fantastic.
We love what they do here. It's a real community resource and it's just great.
It's fantastic. It's really nice to have a community thing. It doesn't feel commercial. It's really friendly and welcoming.
We've only had a little look round. We've seen the water wheel and that's fabulous. Well worth a look.
To have a water wheel running, or on event days 3 and 4 water wheels running, it sort of sets us apart from any other industrial sort of setting where you've got static machinery. And it's how the trust was first formed, and they were running water wheels 10-15 years ago. So we're back to those glory days where we've got 4 water wheels that will run.
The site is really special and it draws people, but then it's the people that have really made that project. So the craftspeople, like the forgers and the grinders, who can give you that insider knowledge into how things would have been done 100, 200 years ago. The lottery money has just been given us the opportunity to bring in people from the outside that we would never have sort of worked with before. So Andrew, the actor, for example, he's really sort of boosted the confidence, I think, of our interactors and given us a lot more than just that one performance to work with. So we're now thinking about the next performance that we can create.
I think there's something about the fact that we do look like a little village with the trees and the water and the wildlife and the buildings that look as they would have looked. That really helps people to feel a sense of belonging here. And I think the variety of activities we've got, the haberdashery, the gardening and the working directly with visitors, means that a really wide variety of volunteers can find something to do here and find a place where they're really welcomed and really accepted. And I think that's paid off massively in terms of equipping this beautiful place with a really welcoming vibe from a really friendly bunch of volunteers.